Hello, and welcome to another edition of KYC News. Today, we'll be discussing some fascinating information. First and foremost, subscribe to our channel for up-to-date as well as archived content. The earliest known firearms date to China in the 10th century. The first people to create gunpowder were the Chinese, and historians often attribute the invention of the first guns to these fire lance-like weapons. The earliest evidence of stone tips stained with animal blood date to about 64,000 years ago and come from the natal region of what is now South Africa. Since the beginning of warfare, man has sought to create the ideal weapon to vanquish his foes, and it truly is amazing how far we've come since then, with some organizations creating some incredible weapons, such as a fully automatic 12-gauge shotgun and an insane gun that fires over 1 million rounds per minute. Look at these 10 bizarre military innovations. Auto Attack 12. Maxwell Acheson created the AA-12 auto assault shotgun while working at Military Armaments Corporation in the early 1970s. Production rights were later sold to Jerry Weber of Military Police Systems in 1987. He released his improved model in 2004, and a year later it went into production after undergoing no less than 200 changes and improvements over the original blueprint. The AA-12 is a fully automatic gas-powered API blowback shotgun that can accommodate two 3.5-inch 12-gauge bullets, including buckshot, flares, slugs, stun batons, and high-explosive fragmenting rounds. It may employ either a drum with a capacity of 20 to 32 rounds or a detachable 8-round box magazine as magazines. It boasts a muzzle velocity of 1,050 feet per second and a cyclic rate of 300 rounds per minute. Despite firing in full auto mode, the sluggish rate of fire makes single shots or bursts quite simple to execute by briefly pulling the trigger. It's noteworthy to note that even combat has regulations regarding the use of specific types of ammunition. During the First World War, German media started accusing the French and fictitious Belgian free shooters of utilizing expanding bullets, sometimes known as dum-dums. The British were providing the German forces with this ammunition, which was a flat-nosed, unjacketed man-stopper, according to an official German complaint. It was the Indian Army that developed the hollow-nose expanding bullet, and Dum-Dum, an industrial municipality outside of Calcutta and where the round got its name, was a municipality where the bullet got its name. Bullets with pointed tips were then designed for use in the early 1900s to improve ballistic performance, but these had a bad reputation for causing terrible wounds and unnecessary suffering, sometimes doing significantly more harm to the human body than gum dumping. The odd thing is that when it comes to being the most mad and lethal weapons of all time, Nerve Agent VX, hollow point ammunition is extensively utilized by police forces in the USA due to its stopping capability as well as the premise that restraining them would damage innocent bystanders. Venomous Agent X, or VX, ought to be first on the list. Since the Chemical Weapons Convention of 1997 prohibited their use as a weapon of mass destruction identified by the United Nations and the CDC as the most lethal of all nerve agents, stockpiles of the substance have been continuously eliminated. It is fatal after breathing in just 25 to 30 milligrams of VX, or just 10 milligrams if it comes into contact with the skin. Once in the body, VX works quickly by acting on acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter that neurons use to send signals to muscles instructing them to move. Once the signals are sent, acetylcholine breaks down, crippling the nervous system and eventually causing total paralysis. Because VX stops acetylcholine from degrading, there is an abundance of communication. The brain is no longer able to control the body's actions because the muscles become overstimulated. Symptoms consist of sweating and drooling, hazy vision, fast breathing, and an irregular heartbeat. It only becomes a serious issue when the muscles that control how high and low the chests rise and fall when breathing are impacted, and when they are paralyzed, breathing becomes impossible, and it all happens within minutes, which is why this horrific weapon is prohibited. Hydrocarbon bomb. The hydrogen bomb, also known as a thermonuclear weapon, is more potent than atomic or fission bombs, such as those used in World War II to obliterate the Japanese cities of Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Those bombs had a yield of 15 and 20 kilotons of TNT, respectively. Contrarily, the United States conducted its first hydrogen bomb test in November 1952, which resulted in an explosion of 10,000 kilotons of TNT. By 1954, the country conducted a nuclear test called Castle Bravo, which resulted in an explosion of 15 megatons of TNT, 2.5 times the amount predicted. This was due to the use of lithium deuteride, which produced a tritium bonus when cascading neutrons converted it into tritium and helium, and tritium. When the weapon exploded, many onlookers immediately realized something had gone horribly wrong. The bomb's brightness was so intense that men could see their bones through their flesh as shadows, and streams of light could be seen more than 30 miles away onboard in secure doors and hatches. The fireball, which was miles in diameter and hotter than the surface of the sun, was the biggest explosion in history at the time, but later the Soviet Union would drop something much bigger called Metal Storm if a name ever fit a weapon perfectly. Navy ships' sailors said the heat was like having a blowtorch aimed at their bodies. The shock wave was incredible, nearly knocking observation aircraft from the sky. The metal storm would then occur. The fastest mechanical weapons systems can only spit out about 6,000 rounds per second, but the metal storm ammunition cartridge is unique and has no shell casing and no primer. In fact, it is an Australian-made, U.S. funded weapon that can fire 180 rounds in a 0.01 seconds burst and reportedly fires 1.6 million rounds per minute. At its peak, it can send a wall of 24,000 9mm rounds moving at Mach 5. Which, although being very ridiculous, are piled nose to tail in each barrel and fired electrically one at a time from front to back. This makes the application of this weapon very specific, such as when you need to shoot something 1 million times in just 60 seconds. The Japanese government developed the bomb known as Unit 731 in Harbin, China, with the good intentions of promoting public health and conducting studies that would be useful to Japanese military, such as how long someone might survive hunger, dehydration, and certain ailments. The worst atrocities you can imagine were done here, so horrific we can't speak about them in this movie, but as the war dragged on, the Japanese started using prisoners of war as test subjects, and at least 250,000 people died as a result. However, one of the experiments they conducted involved releasing rats infected with the bubonic plague in order to infect the prisoners so they could be studied. This resulted in the plague bomb, and from 1940 to 1942 rats were airdropped in central Hunan province and the eastern province of Xinjiang in China. The Japanese surrender on September 2, 1945, prevented a plot for kamikaze pilots to strike San Diego with planes laden with plague-infected fleas and swollen bodies. Residents of these places describe how individuals dropped like flies in hours or days. Due to several early science fiction works, the C-3 laser weapon system exists. For a while, many people believed laser weapons would be impossible to develop or would be too powerful to cause significant harm. Laser weapons have always interested many people because it could be applied to combat, yet the future has already arrived. The US Navy developed the Antique 3 laser weapon system, also known as the XN-1 LAWS. The first prototype was installed on the USS Bonds for testing in 2014, where it performed flawlessly against low-end threats and destroyed a UAV and a simulated small boat attacker. LAWS uses an infrared beam with a solid-state laser array that can be tuned to destroy a target using 30,000 watts of power to fry sensors. Burnout engines or ignite rockets or munitions that are installed on military planes or helicopters. Atomic bomb. The neutron bomb is yet another weapon that sounds like it belongs in a science fiction book. It is a specialized nuclear weapon, also known as an enhanced radiation warhead, that emits a significant amount of harmful radiation rather than a large blast like a standard nuclear warhead. It's essentially a miniature thermonuclear bomb made of a few kilos of plutonium or uranium that has been fired by a conventional explosive. This fission trigger causes an explosion in a capsule made of a few grams of deuterium tritium that is still alive today. This bomb might only have a 1 kiloton yield, but in a 1.2-mile radius, the fusion reaction would release a powerful wave of neutron and gamma radiation that might penetrate several feet of Earth's surface and living tissue. The railgun is unlike any other military weapon in use today. It is quicker, less expensive, and more lethal than a traditional gun or cannon. An explosive propellant is used in traditional firearms or cannons to deliver a projectile at its target. However, a railgun fires a massive solid slug that inflicts significant damage due to its bulk and velocity. It takes 2 minutes to charge the weapon, but it just takes a fraction of a second to fire upon impact because the two rails operate like wires with a magnetic field circling around each rail. When compared to missiles, which can cost between $500,000 and $1.5 million each, the railgun offers a much more affordable way of engaging the enemy. This project has been studied for many years, and the slug projectile superheats to create a hypersonic sphere of slag capable of penetrating armor, melting steel, and burning everything in its path. Once again, as recently as 2017, a project called Project Thor, also known as Rods from God, was intended to be a satellite or launcher vehicle that would move over its target and fire projectiles using kinetic energy. The tungsten rods could end up traveling at over Mach 10 and have an explosive impact equivalent to 11.5 tons of TNT. According to reports, the US has the technology to use this weapon at will, but the cost and the potential for non-tungsten projectile components to melt if Mach 10 is exceeded are the biggest drawbacks. Regardless, Project Thor would undoubtedly be a terrifying weapon and bring our list of 10 insane military technologies to a close. Thanks for viewing, and we hope you enjoyed the video. Let us know which one of these was your favorite by leaving a comment.